Hello and welcome to Ask Me Anything. My name is Kimberly Henderson and I'm the Elder Abuse Project Coordinator with Elder Options. In honor of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day on June 15th, we're hosting 4 specific Ask Me Anything sessions on elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Today, our guest is Assistant State Attorney Heather Jones with the 8th Judicial Circuit. Welcome, Heather, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, we've got some questions ready for you. Are you ready to get started?
I am.
All right. So our first question is, what type of work do you do in your role as the Assistant State Attorney?
As an Assistant State Attorney, I'm one of 45 Assistant State Attorneys in our circuit, in the 8th Judicial Circuit. We all work for the State Attorney, who's here locally, Bill Cervone. And each of us are assigned very specific roles in prosecution. Basically, we prosecute the crimes that occur in the 8th Judicial Circuit. And my role specifically is the County Court Division Chief, which means I supervise our youngest lawyers, the intern director, so I supervise our law students who are coming and working with us in the hopes of being Assistant State Attorneys someday. But in my role that's most relevant to our conversation today, I am also the prosecutor assigned to the Abuse in Later Life project that we've been working on together for the last, gosh, I don't know how long. You'll have to tell me.
It's almost a year. So, all right, awesome. Thank you. So our next question is, if an older adult has been the victim of abuse, neglect, and/or exploitation, what is the process for reporting the abuse and seeking justice in that situation?
That's a really good question. And I think for a lot of individuals, not just older adults who experience abuse, neglect, or exploitation, but for the people in their lives who care about them and who love them and maybe seeing something like this happen, there's a few different options. First, of course, anytime someone is a victim of a crime, 911 is always a good option, especially if you have an immediate danger. Even if you don't have an immediate danger, you can call 911. Or you can call law enforcement. Let's say it's not an immediate danger, but you want to report a crime, you can call your local law enforcement agency. In Alachua County, the Sheriff's Office or the Gainesville Police Department in Gainesville. You can also call APS and allege abuse either online, if it's easier, and that's an option, or by the abuse hotline number to make a phone call to report abuse. So there are a lot of different options, and hopefully anyone who didn't already know that knows now that they can always call for help and get any one of a number of agencies to respond and to look into what the allegations are.
Okay, great. Thank you. The abuse number is 1-800-96-ABUSE, and we'll put some numbers up at the end of the screen after our interview for our viewers. Can you tell us a little bit about a case and how it processes through the criminal justice system once, charges are filed or a report is made with law enforcement?
Absolutely. If a call comes through the abuse hotline and the abuse hotline becomes aware of a criminal act, then they will send that along to law enforcement. Also, of course, a call directly to law enforcement should begin an investigation. Our office is not involved in the early stages of the investigation. However, if we get to the point where a local law enforcement agency thinks they have enough for a criminal act could be abuse, it could be neglect, it could be exploitation, the spending and using of an older adult's money in a way that they don't want. It could be as simple as just a grand theft. So it doesn't necessarily have to be one of our actual, in Florida, elder abuse violations. It could be any other type of crime that happens to be committed against an elderly or disabled adult. Once that comes to us, we have prosecutors here that are assigned to review the case. We, in addition to me, actually have specific prosecutors who have shown an interest in areas of abuse of our older adults and are interested in reviewing those cases. Our survivor, our elder adult who experienced this crime would have an opportunity to come in, meet directly with the prosecutor. The prosecutor would then take that information plus all of the evidence that law enforcement has gained for us and make a decision about whether or not the case can be prosecuted. And there are cases that we simply don't have enough evidence. There are cases that we do. And if we do pursue prosecution, then we begin the process through the court system. Here at basically all of our law enforcement agencies, all of our state attorney's offices have a victim witness services division that hopefully can help a survivor of a crime walk through this process, explain the rights that the survivor has. And then what we would do next is begin the court process. And there's a lot of court dates, and there's a lot of time spent investigating the case from the defense perspective. And we, on the vast majority of cases, reach a resolution that we communicate with the victim or survivor of the crime, making sure that they understand the resolution. That could be probation, could be jail, could be prison. Hopefully is restitution if we have a financial crime. But we also have a lot of cases that may very well just have to go to trial. And that's the time where I think it gets most scary for our victims and witnesses of crimes, when you have to testify. But again, that's what our victim witness services is there to kind of help everyone see how that process is. And you can imagine how hard that is when the perpetrator of a crime is maybe a loved one, a child, a good friend. Really hard. Yeah.
Very difficult. So we mentioned earlier in the interview that the state attorney's office is a partner in the End Abuse and Later Life project with Elder Options. So how has that partnership enhanced services for senior victims of crime? I know you mentioned the Victim Services Department. Maybe is there any special training that the assistant state attorneys receive when working on elder abuse cases?
Well, a couple things about the project is the first thing that it's brought to our office that I think on some level we knew, but it's always good to be reminded, are the issues related to these specific crimes. The first is the idea that, and I think there are a lot of assistants who don't know the fact that for every one crime of this nature that is reported to us, 23 aren't. And those are national statistics that I would gather are actually far worse than the actual numbers we have. So first and foremost, I think what this project is doing is it's bringing an awareness to law enforcement and to prosecutors that a lot of us may have spent a lot of years prosecuting and not realizing. Mr. Cerrone has dedicated my time to this project, also a second prosecutor, Victoria Watson, and our head of victim services, Debbie Sider, is also a part of this group, which means that she can and has been helping her victim advocates become better aware and go to training. As you know, one of the things that the project is doing that is really our first major set of trainings is training law enforcement to spot the issues associated with these crimes, so that if we can get them, the community reporting the crimes, we also have the next step of educating our law enforcement officers on the best way to investigate these crimes and to realize that there actually is a possibility of prosecution with proper investigation. And then, of course, I think not the final step, but another really important step isn't going to be to just educate our prosecutors who have an interest in this area, but educate all of the prosecutors in our area so that they are not quick to think, oh, well, you know, this was a son helping a mom pay her bills. I'm really not going to look much further, but to recognize that we really need to look further and do our best to make sure we're protecting the older adults in our community.
Some very unique challenges for older adults who have been victimized, especially by a family member, and maybe they're not wanting to get them in trouble. There's a lot of emotions that are tied to that situation, and many times there are multiple criminal acts that have occurred. It might be abuse and exploitation, or neglect in addition to abuse and exploitation as well. So we truly appreciate at Elder Options, the State Attorney's Office, being part of this project. I wanted to ask, how has the COVID response affected services at the State Attorney's Office in cases and maybe court hearings? How has that impacted everything?
It has had a major impact. The one thing we're not seeing, I actually kind of went back and looked a little bit at some of the stats and our cases that have come in since late February and early March. One thing we're not seeing are cases coming to our office. So one thing I certainly wonder, and I'm sure you have in all of the work you've been doing during this time, is are we seeing even greater underreporting when someone is at home and isn't seeing other members of the community kind of share an experience or report something. So we are not seeing the cases coming in. Of the cases that were already pending, we can't, or our current policy is that we don't interact with anyone in the public, and that is for the safety of our lawyers and our support staff, but also for the safety of our witnesses and our victims and survivors. And so what's happening there is we are meeting with them either by phone or by Zoom, by the different options that we have. And that really, we're finding, can be challenging for all witnesses and victims of any age. Access to internet, access to certain types of phones that have apps and things like that. So we're doing our best to make sure that we're offering our services without the face-to-face contact. And then of course, I don't know how much everyone's keeping in tune with what court hearings can and cannot happen, but over these last few months, there are only very specific types of court hearings that are permitted to happen in the courthouse in the presence of the judges. And therefore, the vast majority of court hearings, including these types of case managements and things that are just kind of watching a case move along in the process, cannot happen in the presence of the judge. And no jury trials are permitted by the Supreme Court. They suspended them in March, and they are currently suspended through July 6th. So if someone wants a trial on any allegations, we cannot do that for them, and these cases are having to wait.
And I feel, especially since we're talking about elder abuse, older adult cases, you know, it's really important to have those precautions in place because they are especially vulnerable to COVID-19. So I appreciate that those policies are in place to not only keep your staff safe, but also keep those survivors safe as well. And we touched on this a little bit about the number of elder abuse cases. So I was going to ask you if you've seen an increase in elder abuse cases. And I know you said that you really were concerned about them not being reported. And I agree that is a concern that we have. I think all of the partners that work on the End Abuse in Later Life project are concerned about that because often, in most cases, the abuser is a family member or someone that's in the home with the older adult. And right now, with the social distancing standards, you know, many older adults are isolated at home with their abuser. And so, you know, there's more risk and fear involved with reaching out for help. So it's my hope that once we get past the COVID-19 pandemic, that maybe some of these survivors that, you know, have been at home and been isolated will be able to reach out for services. So I do want to also share that due to the COVID-19 response, Elder Options has received some additional funding to help with some other services for seniors. So we definitely can help with meals. We have a teletalk line where seniors who are feeling isolated can have a weekly call from one of our staff just to check in and see how they're doing. And a lot of times through our elder helpline, we get referrals of abuse because they may disclose abuse to one of our elder helpline associates. So I will share the elder helpline is 1-800-262-2243. And then also the state attorney's number, and this is your office in Gainesville, is the 352-374-3670, correct?
That's correct. And if someone were to call that number, because of course we are the entire 8th Judicial Circuit, so that means if you call that number trying to reach the state attorney's office for Baker, Bradford, Union, Gilchrist, or Levy, the receptionist can certainly get you to the right county, no problem.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for being on the program today. And thank you for the work that you're doing to help keep elders safe in our community.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks. And thank you, viewers. We'll see you next time on Ask Me Anything World Elder Abuse Awareness Day series. Take care.